All right. In this episode, I want to show you a concept, really, not so much a feature. Well, it is kind of a mix of a couple of things. You can see it here in the image menu. It's called Store Image. There's another one under the Brush menu, Store and also Manage it for brushes. And there's also the selection where we capture the alpha channel and you can store it. So what that does is essentially grab a snapshot of your current item, whether it's the image or the brush, like a custom brush, or perhaps the current selection mask, and put that into temporary memory. It's not saved on a file. Okay, so it's not a safe place, but it's a good working place. Let me say, for instance, I've put together a couple of pictures here, and I want to save that image. Maybe there's something really special I like about it, the layout or the content, the colors or whatnot. And before I start messing with it and destroy it, I'd like to grab a snapshot of it. So a really quick way to do that is simply say store image. In that case, it will just put it in memory. And I do actually have the ability of doing a couple of things with that. One is I can get it a little bit bigger, and I can also grab the functions here to say, for instance, paste that image back in here. Now, right now, I wouldn't see a difference. And the same thing happens if I just click here. But if I erased it, if I erase this image here, and let's say I do some changes to it, or I paint something else with it, and later I say, no, I'd like this one. Let's go back to it. Just click it, okay? And that will bring it back in. That's the pasting it into the current image buffer. But if you, let's say, if you change the image size, if you create a new image buffer, and you made it, let's say, much smaller, right? Well, then you know that only part of that picture will fit in there, right? If you click there. So you can also say, well, let's scale it to the current buffer, or you can say, well, let's create a new buffer and or center it, or create a new one. So there's a variety of ways to use that. You can also say, let's put that actually into the alpha channel, and so you now have a selection that is go back in there. Actually, the replace alpha might be even slightly different. That may be the alpha channel that was with the image before we captured that. So there's a variety of things. You can also just work on the different channels, like the red, green, and blue channels, or looking at it in hue saturation value and the YUV. So there's many different ways to explore what to do with that. One of the really fascinating ones too is to just use this as a color palette. Okay, so let's say you have a couple of colors in there that you really like to use for your own painting. Right, you're going to go switch to a different brush to actually start doing some painting with, right? But you do want to use the colors that are offered in this image you saved, or you stored. Let's use the word stored. So as you're painting, you say, okay, I need this red. How do you pick that as a color? Well, you can just switch down here. This color picker now indicates that you're actually using this as a color. And you see, as I'm dragging around here, the colors go wild over here, and they change according to what's right under my color picker. So I can go and pick that yellow and paint with that yellow. I can go pick this purple and paint with that, and some red and some red. So any picture, really, any photograph even, can act as a color selector, as a basis for your color selection. And in fact, you can find right here, import, that you can load an image straight into a stored image. So you don't have to actually load images into here before you can store them. You can load them directly into the stored area, and you can have that multiple times. So you can have this one stored, and then if you like this one as well, then you go and store it again. So you can store this one as well. You can have many stored images as different snapshots, and at any time you say, let's go back to this guy, or let's go back to this guy. Oh, and I have the alpha channel probably protecting that right now, so let's go clear that, and that's why it's not actually doing anything. But there's, and then also the color mode, of course. Now that I'm back in image stored mode rather than color selection mode, you'll see it replace the image as I'm clicking one or the other. And there's a couple of other ways to store images. There's also one from the clipboard. If you have something that, let's say you use View or some other, maybe Photoshop or some other programs to do some editing, and now you want to take it into Dogwaffle, what you can do is you can grab it from the clipboard. If you copied that image into the clipboard, you can paste it here, but you can also paste it straight into the stored image. So once again, a way to do something with the stored image. This one is empty, it's black, because I actually don't have an image in the in my clipboard right now. But you can see it has a default tiny little rectangle up there, or square, probably a 32 by 32. Now, so that's storing the image, and there's other things we can store. One thing we can also store is the brush. So if, for instance, I have right here the store and manage, right now it will show me what image I had in the brush. In fact, it's probably multiple images. If I look at the film strip, yep, this is that animated brush that I had picked from the browser media. I can easily create something like that myself if I go and use my color or my brush selection tool here, right? Shortcut B for brush. I can go and pick this up, and that becomes my new brush. And you see this icon right here there indicating what's my current brush image, just this one image now. So if I go to the brush and store this in order to manage it, you now have this one image. It made the white background transparent because it found that to be the background that's also the, or close enough to the erase color, right? But you can always keyframe, or you can color frame and you know, go to a different color to make a different one transparent, maybe the yellow one if you grab this here. So there's a variety of ways to manage your keying, and then you can store that again. So you have a variety of brushes that are stored. Oh, this one actually is the same, but you see the idea. If I go and pick up a different, maybe I'll go and pick up just the center of that flower and store this one. So now I have this one, so I can pick this guy to paint with that, and then I can pick this guy to paint with that, right? And so that's the idea, is that you can create yourself sort of a collection of brushes that are going to be really handy. The moment you need them, you have them all ready to go. And here's another one. Let's grab this guy as well, and again store it. There's a shortcut for that. It's a double quote, and that's because it's something you really want to be able to do quickly, right? Click here, paint with that, click here, paint with that, click here, paint with that. So that's storing brushes, and really we call them store and manage, because there's going to be a lot of things you're going to do in order to manage these brushes once you have stored them. You don't want to necessarily use them just in this current original color. That's one thing you do, but you can also change their hue or change their saturation and other appearance. So you can then paint with the green version of that, and you can paint with a cyan version of it, and so on. So you see the power of a stored image, or a stored brush in this case, is that you can also manage it and do a lot of things with it before you start using it again in a different form. Alright, so we have stored images, and we have stored brushes, and I am going to go back to this one now and also make a stored selection. That's the third thing that we can also store, and we will want to do that. So let me show why. What we'll do here is use the selection, maybe the magic wand, right? And so we click on the white, and we get a nice selection. Maybe with the anti-aliasing, a little bit slower, but still really fast, and we have a nice selection. And then we invert that. Actually, let's see, well, what is it that's selected now? Is it the white area, or is it this part? How do you tell? You know, I mean, you've got the marching ants going ever so slowly along the edges, but do you remember whether we picked here or picked here? After a while, this might get a little bit confusing. So if you go to the selection mask and look at store alpha, it will store the alpha channel for you, and here you go. So you can see the white parts is the parts that are selected, and the black parts are the parts that are not in the selection mask. So that's the sort of the blocked area, and you can of course use that to paint or to you know, to protect an area. So if you go to the paint tools, and maybe this time we'll use the hot dog brush, it's going to appear only where the selection mask lets it, because it's the white selection mask area. If you wanted to invert that, if you wanted actually a different area, one thing you'll want to do is first of all clear the selection. Now don't clear here altogether with the left button, because that will clear everything and ignore the selection mask. Undo that. Instead, you right click on this and say clear the selection, and you can select it to the primary or secondary color, whatever those colors currently happen to be. All right, you can see them here. For instance, right now we have green as the primary, and I'm going to right click here for blue as a secondary color. So you can always then use that to erase that to the blue area. But you can also force it to other colors like white and black if you don't happen to have those in the primary and secondary colors. So the beauty of this thing here though is that you can actually use the selection mask in a variety of ways. You can go and, for instance, invert it. Right, that's one thing you can do here, so that now the selection is on the inside, and then it's here in the stored area and not yet out here. So right now here I'm still painting the background, but if I'm going here to replace this image as a mask into this selection, that's the active selection mask, if I replace it, now it's going to protect the outside and let me paint the inside. Okay, so what else can we do here? We can actually grab the alpha, whatever the alpha channel currently contains, we can grab that into this stored area. And just like with brushes and images, you can store any selection at any time. So you can have multiple stored selections or alpha buffers. You can also paint into it. You can make changes to it. You can smudge it. Right. So right here you can see I'm doing some blurring in this little area, ever so subtly. Perhaps a little bit stronger. Perhaps, and you can resize this too, by the way, to see it better, up to a certain limit. You can also go back to painting right in there, making your selection actually something different than what it started from. And if that's not what you wanted, you can always get the alpha from the main image and put it back in there too. You know, quite often you'll actually use those selection tools, the selection filters, like the box filter, the Gaussian blur, grow and alpha and so on. Grow is something that you use a lot with text, for instance, if you want to have a little border around it that you can give a different color. But even on something like this, on this flower. So let's go do that actually. Let's go see where my original image is. There. So I got this image and I want to create a red border around it. I'm going to get the alpha, right? That's the one that I'm seeing here right now. I would be able to paint here, but let's undo that with U for undo or Control Z. And now I'm going to grow the alpha, so it's going to grow to the outside. Let's see how we do that. Selection, grow alpha. And it's going to give us perhaps 5 more pixels to the outside. Okay, so now you can see that the selection mask, the marching ants are slightly on the outside of the original shape. And if I grab it here, if I get alpha here, it will show the bigger one. But I really wanted to keep the other one too. So this is a case where we really need to keep the other one as well. So I'm going to undo here. The selection mask goes back to the original, and I'm going to store also this version. So we now have the small and the large image, the alpha selection. And what I'd like to do really is have this guy in here and then subtract this guy. Look what happens then. So I'm going to replace the image with this selection, and then I'm going to subtract this selection. Now I have, you can ignore the outer part, perhaps we will not use that, but this part here, we have a mask. Let me zoom in a little bit here with the zoom tool. You can see that we have a selection. In fact, let's go grab a selection of that. Let's store that one too. So now you can see that we have subtracted the large image, and we have subtracted the smaller image from the larger image, and what's left is the borders that shows the difference between the two. And that's the 5 pixel band that we have added that way. So now we can actually go and paint in that area. Right? So that's an idea that we can now add, just by painting right in there, some additional decorative value to it. Right? And of course, maybe we don't want to see at that point the entire image. Maybe we want to just pick up this color, this image as a new brush with the transparency mask in such a way that the white is transparent, but this time the red band is included in it. So what we can do is we can grab this larger image again here and replace that. So now we have the outer area again, and you can go and pick that up. And you know that if you pick the whole thing, you can go brush, use the selection, or select it as mask. That's a Control B. That will pick the entire image and the entire selection. So everything you see here that's in white will be in the brush, and it will basically take those colors and also the selection mask and put that into a custom brush. But there's another way to do that, of course, with the custom brush selection tool, those square brackety thingy. And if the selection mask is active, you will see that, and it will use it for a new stored brush. And so we have that now. We have a stored brush where the image of the brush actually contains that red outline. So you see how I've used the store image, the store brush, and the store selection kind of in an intertwined way. There's a good number of value, a good number of things you can do with that, and I highly encourage you at any time to stop and think what you could do about storing that particular image in progress. It's always a good thing to go back to with just one click, and you don't have to go recreate it. Now, but keep in mind, it's not safe. It's not stored in on file. It's just in memory, and if anything were to happen, like a power outage or battery low or a crash or whatnot, you might lose that image. So it's not a safe place, it's a stored place, and it could go underwater, so to speak. So anyway, I hope this was useful, and we will certainly be using this a lot. Through the coming exercises, we'll be storing brushes, storing images, so we can go back and forth to them continually without even having to think about it. Alright, see you soon in another episode of PD Howler. My name is Philip Steiger at thebest3d.com.